thank you for watching. Take two. Take two because take one ran out of time on the memory card. So, I'll talk a little bit slower now since I've got a full memory card to work with, since I deleted what was on the memory card before. This is my comments on my thoughts, my review of two debates between Kent Hovind and Snake Was Right, who was also called Taylor by the people moderating the debate. Snake Was Right went first in their first debate. He gave a vague definition of evolution. He should have been more specific. He claimed that the debate should not include cars, armor, or arms. But if there are similarities between cars and similarities between the different animals, and you're claiming similarities between the animals prove something, it's completely logical to bring up the similarities between cars to show whether, there's good logic there. Snake Was Right claimed abiogenesis is a strawman argument. No, it isn't. When Kent Hovind brings up abiogenesis, it is because it is in science textbooks. It's at the websites for the science departments of universities, not the philosophy department or the religion department, but the science department of universities. He did give Kent Hovind credit for believing in microevolution, so at least he didn't lie about Kent there. He used the appeal to majority piece of logical fallacy, bad logic. If the majority believes something because it's true, pointing out the majority believes it is not proof of anything and should not persuade somebody. Are there people persuaded by that bad logic? Maybe. But show me why. Explain to me what the majority has seen. Show me what the majority has seen if they're right. Snake wrote a list of 3 possible reasons why we have the current situation of what percentage of scientists believe evolutionism, what percentage of creationists are scientists, and things like that. He wrote a list of 5 logical steps, and he ended them with, evolution is responsible for the changes in populations between fossil layers. His 5 steps do not actually eliminate all of the possibilities. When you're proving something, one thing you need to do is disprove the other possibilities. Sometimes if proof is so strong just by explaining why something is, you do eliminate the other possibilities. But Snake Was Right did not eliminate the other possibilities. He claimed that describing the theory of evolution, it should be called, not theory, but the hypothesis of evolutionism, is a straw man. No, describing what somebody actually believes is not a straw man. Even if they don't like the way you describe it, or they don't want people to know they really believe something. If you describe what they believe accurately, that's not a straw man argument. Kent Hovind pointed out there are more than 3 possibilities for how we have the circumstances of what percentage of people believe something. He claimed we don't know that life evolved. We don't have proof of it. And farmers are a better source of understanding of the limits of evolutionism on what changes can happen between animals than fossils are. Because the farmers actually see what's giving birth. The fossils, they're just bones in the ground. You don't see the fossil in the ground actually giving birth to something. Snake Was Right claimed that people who believe like he does aren't just drawing lines on paper. Yeah, they are. If you're not drawing a line between something you saw, it's just lines on paper. Now, a line drawn by a witness is an example of evidence. But people drawing these phylogenetic trees with lines between humans and apes, between a single-cell organism and all life, they are not drawing what they have seen. He had pictures of Tasmanian tigers also called the thylacine, if I'm remembering right, which is a potential, well, to the best of our knowledge, it is an extinct animal. Are there some that survived and realized they need to stay away from people to stay alive? Maybe. But it might be extinct too. If there are any, they're doing a good job of hiding themselves from people. But the Tasmanian tiger is a marsupial. It's not a half dog, half cat. And so his argument is really weak there. He claimed that admitting microevolution, believing microevolution, means you accept it all. Once you've said you accept that, you're by default proving that you accept all, or claiming to accept all. No, you're not. Just because I believe that my car can drive east and that your car can drive east, that does not mean I have to believe you could drive all the way across the Atlantic Ocean to Europe. Now, Bat Dad thinks that because the Bat Dad who makes guest appearances on my channel is an idiot. Snake was right, had a chart of the salamanders in California, and supposedly, well, maybe it's really true. Some of those can't breed together. So what? They're still salamanders. So since they are all still salamanders, inability to breed together is an unimportant fact. A distraction. Let's get this in case it's important. It's not important. It's a pharmacy that's trying to annoy me into going to a different pharmacy. Okay, now where was I? Yeah, they call the salamanders ring species because they make a ring around the Central Valley of California. The salamanders live in the foothills all around the Central Valley. He claims that algae has been turned into a multicellular animal in a laboratory. I'm skeptical of this. I'm skeptical of that. And that would really be interesting to read about. If that actually has happened, describe in the comments what the website is to go to read about that happening. And he's claiming not a colony, but, you know, differentiated cells. The cells are specialized. A colony of animals is not a multicellular animal. It is not logical, it's not logically speaking a good step, proof of it becoming multicellular. A great example of that is just the fact that people specialize. Some animals that live in groups specialize. The worker ants and the queen ant and the drone ants and the soldier ants. All these different ants are still ants and are working together and doing different roles. It doesn't prove that the ant is one huge body. It's a bunch of individual bodies working together. Kent Hovind had his next turn to speak. He pointed out, he said the ring species in the diagram are still lizards. He was calling salamanders lizards, but salamanders and lizards have the same body shape. So that's not a big faux pas on Kent Hovind's part. But he was right. All those salamanders are still salamanders. They did not turn into mice. Kent Hovind pointed out we should talk about kinds, not species, because species is a modern construct. Species really do exist, but species is not the word used in the Bible, and if you're going to claim Kent Hovind is wrong about something, you should accurately describe him and not prove he's wrong by describing what somebody else believes or something else. Kent Hovind pointed out not all the bones of all of the animals in the past have been found. They've had some artist drawings of animals based on just a skull. Or just, Nebraska Man was based on just a tooth. He pointed out that if there was a worldwide flood, the animals would be sorted based on their density and mobility. So things that can't try to get away, like clams that don't move much at all, if at all, they are going to be buried at the bottom. Something that could run away from the water as it's coming at them, or can climb if it's only partially buried by the first wave of sediment, could climb up a little bit higher, they're going to be higher. Birds with their hollow feathers and hollow bones, they're going to be the highest of the things. Kent Hovind pointed out that if you're going to claim that similarities proves random mutations in evolution of something, then you are claiming that a tricycle is a half bicycle, a half car. It's a transition between the two. But of course, tricycles are not that. They are designed that way. It was Snake was Wright's turn next. He claimed that we do know that the fossils had kids. No, we don't. They're bones in the ground. He claimed Kent Hovind's description of sorting during a worldwide flood doesn't make sense. And he is wrong on that. It makes perfect sense. If you think Kent Hovind doesn't make sense, here's how you can prove Kent wrong. Fill up a big container with water and mud and sand, and get some little animals, put it in there. And if your birds end up with your lizards and they don't end up higher, then you've got some proof that you could come to show me. Put the video on YouTube if you've been able to do that. He claims speciation proves macroevolution. No, it doesn't. Until you have seen the lizard turn into the mouse, you can't claim it's been scientifically proven. You can believe it, but let's be honest about what's the difference between our beliefs and what is scientifically proven. They claim that chemistry proves millions of years. How could chemistry prove that? Chemistry is which chemicals do what. That wouldn't prove millions of years. Yes, so Snake was right. Yeah, one thing he was weak on was understanding what proof is. What would count as proof and evidence of something? Because he had no proof, but he was getting into this debate claiming that he had proof of things. I hope he's never on my jury. Well, no, it depends what he thinks beforehand. If I'm ever accused of something I haven't done. Kent Hovind had his turn. He pointed out that he's surprised that Snake was right, isn't using his major in this debate. It would make sense to talk about what he knows most about, especially if there's proof of, what he believes there. Snake was right is a cell biology major. I think that's what it was. He's not a major in paleontology or geology, so why not use what he knows best? Maybe because there isn't any proof there. Kent Hovind has pointed out before that frequently somebody who believes evolutionism will point to somebody else, The biologist points to the botanist. The zoologist points to the botanist. The botanist points to the geologist. The geologist says the best proof of evolutionism is with the chemist. All these people point to some other specialty as where the best proof is. Okay, selection is not the same as manufacturing or building. Duh. But Snake was right, was talking as if natural selection builds anything. No, it selects from what's there. Natural selection is a scientific fact, which explains why we do not have thick-furred polar bears running around in the Mojave Desert. It explains why we don't have little heat-tolerant lizards running around with the polar bears up north. It doesn't create anything, though. It eliminates what won't survive in a place. And you really need to go back to school and learn your math again if you think subtracting gets you a bigger number. But that's what Snake was right, apparently believes. Kent Hovind asked if there are any limits. That's important. Kent Hovind is not saying that every animal is going to be a perfect, absolutely 100% mirror of the parent. But what Kent Hovind is claiming is there are differences. There are limits to where these differences will go. All of you guys who are lying about Kent Hovind, I guess I should appreciate you because you are giving me the opportunity to follow some of the commandments from Jesus to forgive my enemies. I don't think of Kent Hovind as my enemy, but I could, since he lies about my religion. When the subject comes up, he doesn't usually talk about it, but when it comes up, he lies about my religion. He's not accurate in details about it. And Jesus said to forgive my enemies and do good to them who despitefully use you and persecute you. And refuting lies is definitely doing something good for Kent Hovind. Okay. Classification of animals is done by people now, and that has nothing to do with how things are created. You know, classification of things is just how we know, how we classify things. We put things based on what they look like now, and it's got nothing to do with how they got there. Snake was right. Claimed that fossils are good proof, because fossils are confirmed by his model, or fossils confirm the model. He liked using that word model. And he claimed that they're finding the fossils where they expect them to be found. He's giving the fossils too much credit. Let's see. Did everybody point out that farmers, but he's giving them too much credit. He should really ask farmers if they're getting lizards out of their chicken eggs. Okay, then they got to the part where they're supposed to interact with each other in the debate. Kent Hovind asked, who is this we? Because Snake was right, was saying we a lot. He was asking if he is actually out there in the dirt with the digging up the bones, and that's why he can say we about the dinosaur bones and the fossils and what they mean and what they do or show. Snake was right, which is just meaning that we means the people who believe the scientific consensus, and not that he was out there digging up the dirt. He shouldn't say we if he isn't the one digging in the dirt. Ken had a good point with that question. Of course, consensus, I already pointed out in this video, consensus does not prove anything. All consensus proves is what most people believe. Kent Hovind had a good point here about consensus. Darwin was going against the consensus. If you're going to chant consensus and you're consistent, you should find the oldest consensus. Because if consensus proves anything, then the oldest consensus must have proved something. At least, if you're going to be logically consistent and claim that consensus is the most important thing, you will use consensus everywhere, and you will find the oldest consensus. Because there should have been, the oldest consensus should have never been scrapped if consensus is the best proof of anything. Let's see, religious conference, not scientific conference. Snake was right. Accused religious people of being unable to be scientific. My notes were religious con, not scientific con. Maybe I should take more in-depth notes. Don't remember all the words he said there. He pointed out that different religions can't believe on their holy book. So what? That does not prove your position. If I tell you you shouldn't buy a certain car from a certain person because it doesn't run, I didn't just prove my car runs. Maybe my car doesn't run too. And Kent Hovind, consensus. Calling is consensus. Snake was right, was claiming that in the past, when Darwin was undoing or proving some false ideas wrong, or Darwin did prove some false ideas wrong. He was not 100% backwards or wrong or unscientific or away from the truth. But he was claiming it was religious consensus in the past and now it's scientific consensus. No. Snake was right. It was a scientific consensus in the past. Consensus just means everyone agreeing, or the vast majority agreeing. And if it was about a scientific matter and they were trying to study things in the past, that was a scientific consensus. So Kent Hovind claimed that the 90-something% of scientists who believe something that Snake was right was quoting was an inaccurate number, and he has seen surveys that show it's closer to 60% of scientists believe evolutionism. Kent Hovind encouraged people to watch the excellent movie Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed by Ben Stein. Everybody should watch that movie because it was great. It was a documentary that showed people being who have been fired, who've had difficulties, who other people tried to get them fired or kicked out of a school because of what their religious belief was. It had nothing to do with the subject of this scientific thing they were studying. Like a doctor. We should not care at all what a doctor thinks about how things got here, as long as he's given the right medicine now. The two have nothing in common. It's potential for a doctor to believe inaccurate things about the past, but give the right medicine now for the right disease and correctly identify certain diseases. Snake was right, pointed out he believes there's no such things as spirits inside of us. Kent Hovind asked for a better example than salamanders, because of the salamander ring species claim that Snake was right made, which was dealing with salamanders, which are still salamanders. They did not become mice. Snake was right, claimed that by Kent Hovind's definition of what a kind is, that the salamanders, and the example he gave of the ring species of various salamanders in California, they're not the same kind according to Kent Hovind's definition. He got that one wrong. Kent Hovind only says that the Bible says they will bring forth after their kind, and so we can trust. So back then, at the beginning, the same kind could bring forth. Kent Hovind never said, and it's not logical to look at that part of the Bible and claim that the Bible is claiming that there's no potential for animals to speciate and have later generations, thousands of years after the creation, be unable to interbreed. Snake was right. Again, like chanting the words, my model predicts. It doesn't, but... So what? Kent Hovind brought up pineapples. I think he was bringing up, asking if animals are related to pineapples. And Snake was right, said no to that. All pineapples? Salamanders and pineapples. Salamanders and pineapples are related. Or do you have proof that pineapples and salamanders once in the past turned from one into the other? Kent Hovind asked for an example of a fossil that was predicted by evolutionism. Snake was right, brought up Archaeopteryx. Kent Hovind claimed Archaeopteryx is an extinct bird, and he's got a good case here. Snake was right, claimed there are dinosaur-like structures in it. Ooh. Kent Hovind had a great refutation of that point. You could say there are motorcycle parts, build a car with motorcycle parts. That doesn't mean that one came from the other. It's possible for a designer or builder to use similar parts and different things. And you could even cut a car in half if you had the right time and tools, and weld a motorcycle half onto the car and have a half bicycle, half motorcycle, half car. And let's see, that would not prove similar ancestor. It could have been made that way. Snake was right, falsely claimed Kent Hovind was using an argument from incredulity or his personal incredulity. No, Snake was right, never proved anything. That is a real concept, but Kent Hovind has not done that here. Kent Hovind pointed out that the dinosaur feathers, like Archaeopteryx or some of the what are claimed to be dinosaur feathers, could just be capillary action. When something is buried and squished in clay and dirt, there might be lines. It's been proven. It's been documented scientifically. There will be lines sometimes that could be mistaken as feathers, and that's just the liquids in the thing pushing against liquids in the thing buried, pushing against the dirt or clay that it's buried in. And Kent Hovind pointed out that changes, which are macroevolution, are not seen now. They would need to be seen to be called scientific. Snake was right, claimed that fossilized dinosaur nests prove reproduction. Kent Hovind's not saying nothing ever reproduced, but to have scientific proof that the dinosaurs reproduced and made something different, you would need to actually see something making something different for that to even be considered as a possibility. But nests only prove that the dinosaurs laid eggs. It does not prove that they gave birth to something different. And different things, the religion of evolutionism claims differences. You're stupid or you're dishonest and lying if you're saying that producing dogs proves that in the past they didn't produce dogs. No, you have to do that now to prove that. Let's see. And Snake was right, was claiming that creationism isn't scientific, or he asked how was creationism scientific or creationist scientific. Kent Hovind asked for salamanders in a lab to be bred to have different parts, like wings. Snake was right, claimed that fish have wings and octopus have wings. There are these fish called flying fish that have long fins that help them glide a little bit further than they would if they did not have those. But they are not the same as bird wings, and they don't fly with them really. The flying fish jump and then glide. That's different than flying. Kent Hovind demanded an explanation about how the changes that have been seen, that we can see, add up to a salamander becoming a non-salamander. Kent Hovind brought up that there's a lot of money spent on horses for the Kentucky Derby and similar horse racing. So why not grow wings on a horse to fly around the track to win the event? Why is there a limit? You can look at a chart for the fastest times in the Kentucky Derby. It started in the 1800s, and it's plateaued. The first horses weren't as fast as they are now, but we're talking about a matter of several seconds in a 1.25 mile race. Several seconds in a 1.25 mile race is not a dramatic change or difference in the speed of the horse. And we've hit a plateau. The horses are not doing it in half of the time that the old horses did. Snake was right, said you can't get those changes in 50 or 60 years. Kent Hovind asked, well, could you get them in 10 million years? Snake was right, said, why not? You can believe that all you want, but that doesn't mean it's scientific if you want to believe that these changes could keep building up and not kill the thing without humans are babysitting it. Let's see. Snake was right. Quote, totally different F wild count. Quote, what would be F? Totally different. I forgot what that F means. Yeah. But it claims something about it being totally different in the wild. If you're going to claim something could happen, it'd be helpful if you show it happening in domestic situations. Kent Hovind pointed out that there are limits to evolutionism, the changes that can happen with animals from natural selection. The animals become less strong, less fit for survival, less survivable in the wild. Of course they do. You know, Kent Hovind brought up the example of cows. When we selectively breed cows to give more milk, those cows would die off in the wild. They need people to take care of them. They become less survivable. So you can't point to that as proof of the potential to turn cows into a whale or a wolf into a whale. Kent Hovind wanted to know where's the evidence. Snake was right, claimed that since cows and amoeba have the same DNA, that proves that one evolved from the other. No, it doesn't. Similar parts don't, languages have similar alphabets. That does not prove, that books randomly happen from an explosion in an ink factory. No, there's a designer behind the books. Just like DNA, there's a designer behind the DNA writing it. So it does not prove what he was claiming. Snake was right, brought up the God of the Gaps argument, which is a false accusation. Christian scientists are not just saying, well, we don't know, God did it, and later we're going to find out, and they're going to have to say, oh, I was wrong. No. The God of the Gaps argument is not a good argument because Christians aren't using it. The complexity of life is something we have now, and pointing that out in no way is saying, well, we don't know, God did it. Then we got to the question and answer section of the debate. Somebody asked a question about pseudogenes, ERVs. How can we use genetics to determine things when we don't know about pseudogenes or something like that? And Snake was right, claimed they didn't use pseudogenes. They don't use genetics didn't use genetics in the past to prove evolutionism. And things like pseudogenes, which we later find out are useful, don't change comparative genetics. He had a bad argument there. Sudden appearance. There was a question about the sudden appearance of animals in the Cambrian explosion, and wouldn't that disprove Snake was right because there are no. There's a lack of these transitions that should be there if Darwin was right. Snake was right. Used his God of the Gaps. He's the one that's saying, well, it's somewhere in between those millions of years of the layers where we have the intermediate forms that somehow didn't get preserved when the other forms got preserved. He's the one who's saying, we don't know, but it was there. Kent Hovind accurately pointed out that when talking about the Cambrian explosion assumes the evolutionist explanation is correct. But things could be sorted because of their density in a worldwide flood and rapid burial. And that's a good explanation for how we have fossils, because things just rot, and then get eaten by scavengers and destroyed by time. Roadkill does not become fossils. That's a fact. And so you needed a worldwide flood to bury everything quickly to get so many fossils. So that's the best explanation for all the fossils. Now, if you have some other source of information that gives more detail about the flood, it does not prove you are unscientific in saying that the best evidence points to a worldwide flood. Kent Hovind pointed out that there are animals in amber, mostly insects. Amber is fossilized tree sap, of course. So some animals got surrounded by tree sap in the past and it fossilized, and we now have these clear, well, amber-colored rocks with bugs inside you can see. Those insects are the same now as they were back whenever they were buried, whether it was millions of years ago or between 3,000 and 4,000 years ago. But we don't see the changes in those insects that evolutionism tells us to expect. There was a question that pointed out that chimpanzees are not actually 98% similar to humans. It's closer to 88%. What's your takeaway from that was like the question. So what do you make of that? Snake was right, claimed that they don't have a nucleotide difference. They're different, however. And Snake was right is using bad logic here. Similar parts being used to make things does not disprove that there is a maker making them. Kent Hovind pointed this out. This debate or the next one. Battleships and spoons. What was the other things? Battleships, eating utensils, and something else are all made of iron. And cars, I think it was. That does not prove that one evolved from the other. It's just a material the builder used to build it. And just like a book writer, they are using the same alphabet if they're writing to the same language. That does not prove anything more than that's the way information is communicated in that language. And so if you want a book that people are going to buy so they can read it, you better use that language. It will also help if you write a book that's interesting to read too, but still, it's going to use that language. Kent Hovind pointed out that when you have billions or trillions of DNA base pairs, then a small percentage is still a very big difference. That's a good point. You know, if somebody is 1% of the way from New Jersey to California, when you're talking about thousands of miles, that 1% is big enough I'm not going to be able to reach out and touch them. And that's going to be too far for me to throw a ball to them. Because a small percentage of a very big thing is still a big difference. Kent Hovind talked about arrowheads. That's a good example of how you can find something in the ground and not know the name of the person that did it. But you can know that the arrowhead couldn't have just happened and there was a person designing it. There was a question about at what point does kind change? Okay, at what point could you say things have changed from a different kind to another? The person was bringing up the example of a poodle. Poodles and wolves are different in some ways, but they are both still canines. They have not changed to a different kind. So somebody was asking, like, maybe, well, couldn't we call a poodle a different kind? Snake was right, claimed, yeah, there are good mutations. Kent Hovind wanted those to be shown. Snake was right, claimed there are genetic mutations that fix things. If the animal fixes itself, it adds the complexity, which is a stronger argument for design. Now on to debate 2 between these two that I've watched. I hope there's going to be another debate. It's fun to watch Kent Hovind out debating people. Even though Kent Hovind is not a good source to go to for your theology. If you go to Kent Hovind for your theology, you will end up on a broad road and not the narrow way that leads to eternal life. So debate 2 was focused on, are there limits to the changes that can happen in animals? Snake was right is a evolutionist. That's his religion. He might have more than one religion, in case any of you are yelling no, but he was a Christian. I don't know him very well. I've never watched his channel. So Snake was right, evolutionist. Kent Hovind, creationist. Snake was right, was the first one to speak in this debate, and he claimed that creationists have painted themselves into a corner or forced themselves to accept evolution if they accept microevolution. Wow, that's intellectually lazy or dishonest or stupid of him to claim. I would need to get into his mind to be more certain about which of those things it is, but now accepting the little changes we can see does not mean you have to accept those changes can add up to something else. A great example is if I believe a car can head east and be in New Jersey driving east, I do not have to believe that car can drive across the ocean. Now, Bat Dad does, the Bat Dad who is a guest on my channel sometimes, because Bat Dad is an idiot. But accepting something small that can be seen does not mean you have to believe things keep going, and we've got some good reason to think there is a metaphorical ocean between the different animals on the earth, different kinds of animals. He claimed that if Kent can't define the limits, that Kent loses the debate, or if Kent can't define when you've but there are limits on kinds, when you've gone from one kind to the other, or how far the changes can be in animals, that he loses the debate. No, he doesn't. Kent Hovind believes there are limits to how far changes will go. And we've got good evidence to believe he's right about that at this point. So he does not have a burden of proof to disprove what we are seeing now. Many times, Snake was right, should have used the word natural selection when he used the word evolution. Natural selection is a scientific fact. Natural selection can explain the difference in the Galapagos finch beaks. Natural selection can explain different colors of different animals. Natural selection can explain wolves becoming, or a very, very similar to a wolf, becoming a Great Dane, Chihuahua, and a poodle, but not a whale. Okay, Kent Hovind had his presentation. He did a very good explanation. He made a very good explanation of natural selection, which is not. Natural selection is not a whale becoming a wolf or a wolf becoming a whale. There are too many. Natural selection creates variety by eliminating different genetics that are not good for survival in an area. Kent Hovind says that the rabbits in Alaska can breed with the rabbits in Minnesota. The rabbits in Minnesota can breed with the rabbits in Florida, but the Florida and Alaska rabbits can't breed together. That's because natural selection and genetic mutations. But they're all still rabbits. And good. So Snake was right. Apparently does not understand the concept of information. Random changes. DNA is information. It's an alphabet that goes into our cells, or whatever you want to call. I don't know what the word is for the Russian alphabet. They've probably got a word that means alphabet, but describes their letters. So you do not, by randomly changing numbers around, get useful information. You get gobbledygook. You need an intelligence thinking about what they're writing, and writing to make letters in the alphabet turn into information on how to build something, or a fun story to read, or an explanation about how or why something happens. Just the same, DNA, which tells the animals' bodies how to be built, shaped, how to react to different chemicals, and things like that. That DNA, it's information. So you're not going to, by random mutations, end up with useful information, random changes. Just like randomly changing something in a book is not going to create something, a whole new book that's going to be useful by being fun to read, useful by accurately describing how to build something. Let's see. And then he claimed that drug-resistant bacteria are actually stronger than the bacteria which are not drug-resistant. He claims they actually outsurvive the non-drug-resistant ones in the wild. I've never heard that from a source I can believe. The scientific information I've seen is that the non-drug resistant bacteria actually outcompete the drug resistance ones when they're put into the same petri dish. So they are weaker. He lied about Kent Hovind again. Kent Hovind does not claim that size is the limit on the variety within a kind of animal. He just points out that there are limits. One example is that there's limits to how big something can be. But he's not saying that's the only limit that there is, and he's not defining kind by size. Kent Hovind accurately put the burden of proof on the one who is trying to get his religious beliefs printed in science textbooks in public classrooms. If you want something put in a scientific textbook, in a public school classroom, the burden of proof is on you to prove it. It's not on me to disprove it, although it has been, Snake was right, his ideas have been disproven, but the burden of proof is on him. Snake was right, ridiculously claimed that hospitals, which is where the drug-resistant bacteria are most common, are wild. It's their wild habitat. No, it isn't. It's a place filled with antibiotics. A wild habitat is wild. Ponds, streams, fields, front yards. That's wild habitat, not stainless steel tubes making up a bed. Okay, Snake was right, made the claim that all animals don't have a single cell common ancestor. Well, then he just proved wrong or refuted evolutionism. Because that's what macroevolution is, everything having a common ancestor. And he just was contradicted, or he contradicted, many science textbooks that say the opposite of what he just said. He's the one that's creating straw man here. He claimed that Kent Hovind's summary of single-cell organism to other animals is wrong and inaccurate description of evolutionism because it takes millions of steps. Kent Hovind never said it's instantly single-cell organism, dog, next generation. He never said it. Never. He does give a short summary, and instead of taking several years, describing each step that evolutionism believes happened that built up to it. Just telling what the beginning and the starting points are. It's not being inaccurate. It's not beating up a straw man. Snake was right, claims that they don't just draw lines on paper. That when you see a phylogenetic tree, they are summarizing the data. But he did not give a thorough explanation about that data. He's wrong on that point. The subject of why this matters came up. Kent Hovind is a creation evangelist. So you should not be surprised if Kent Hovind makes an altar call for people to pay lip service to God at the end of his speech, or call him later so that they can pay lip service to God later, and thus guarantee themselves a spot into heaven, no matter what they do, despite the many times the Bible describes judgment against us and has commandments about what we are supposed to do, and says that faith without works is dead. But Kent Hovind did have a good point on this thing. He brought up, if you can't believe the beginning of something, of a book that's supposed to be an informational book and not just a creative storybook, why would you believe the end of it? That doesn't make sense. Hey, if you're one of those people and you really believe Jesus is your Savior and you are following Him fully, like finding His church, getting baptized by His priesthood authority, please do continue. I hope to rub shoulders with you in the celestial kingdom. I don't know if I'm going to bring up how wrong you were. We'll see. We'll see when we get to the celestial kingdom and find out I'm right about things, about this subject. And I don't know how much I'll rub it in. But you don't make sense to me, and it doesn't make sense to Kent Hovind if you're saying you can't believe the beginning of a book that claims to be true, that claims to be accurate, and it's not giving you a metaphor when it gives you some other information at the end of the book. Snake was right, claimed that cures have come from evolution, but not from creationists. And that's why he believes it, and that's why it's useful, and that's why creationism is useless. He's wrong about that. See, no scientific discoveries or cures for diseases have been based on evolutionism. If it was, doctors would have machine guns ready for when a single-cell organism turned into something other than a single-cell organism, and they could blast it away. Believing the past about something and how it was created is different than what you do to it now. You know, if there's a car mechanic out there who believes there's no such thing as a car factory, but he puts the right part on my car to get it running again, then he put the right part on my car, and so it doesn't matter what he believes about the past. And scientists have found cures for diseases by looking at them now, using the scientific method now, and no cures based on a belief about what happened in the past. They claim that algae have become a multicellular animal. I'm skeptical of this one. But if it has actually happened, tell me in the comments. Don't tell me it's happened, but tell me the website, the year, the study, the scientist, something more so I can look it up and read about it. Kent Hovind successfully showed the fallacy of appeal to majority. It's possible for the majority of people to be wrong about something. It's possible for the majority of people to publicly claim they believe something so they don't get their heads chopped off under certain circumstances where believing something wrong gets your head chopped off. People might say they believe something. Kent Hovind has talked to scientists, he claims, who have to be quiet about what they believe, or they might lose their job. They might not get promotions. There was a question and answer section, and somebody brought up the my note is, what complexity doubt? Okay. The question was something like, what level of complexity or what amount of complexity would cause you to doubt evolutionism? That's a great question. How can you claim things evolved when they're so complex? The more complex something is, the less the odds are that random chance could have made it happen. If you're saying it's not random chance, then you're saying a creator did it. Your creator might, you might not want to call him God, but you're believing there is a creator, a being guiding things if you're saying it's not random chance. And then that's proof that what you believe is a religious belief. But Snake was right. His answer to that was, complexity is a weak proof. Wow. No, it isn't. He's wrong on that one. And he wants an event. He claims he'll believe creationism if you can show him a creation event. Wow. That's bad logic. He claims that if you find a sand in the watch, that the sand is amazing too, and so you can't say, wow, the watch must have been made, so the sand had to have been made too. It's all amazing, and there could be that there's no maker. No, bad logic. Sand is random. Sand does not have, interlocking parts. That the shape of sand can be explained by random chance processes. You can't explain a watch that way. Kent Hovind pointed out that atoms are designed. The best evidence we have now, the best story, a scientific explanation about atoms is they have 3 parts. There's a core of protons and neutrons, and there are electrons spinning around the outside of them. Why do they not stop? They keep going. That's amazing. That's amazing design. How do you get the protons and neutrons to work together like that? Just looking at the cells, the atoms, not cells, the atoms that make up sand is proof that there has to be a designer. Great point there on Kent's part. Snake was right. HIV. I was debating about whether to write AIDS or HIV, and I ended up writing A and then writing H over the A. So HIV resistance, Snake was right, actually admitted that people who are immune to HIV, they're out there, they are resistant because they have lost a gene. Wow, so he's the one that lost the debate there and just admitted his defeat. You see, because if you're resistant to a disease because you lost a gene, that is not gaining information. But you need to gain information if you are going from a single-cell organism that has one cell that does everything, that does not have specialized cells, to a creature that has lungs, a heart, skin, bones, or exoskeleton, muscles, central nervous system, all those things. You need information added, not information lost. So the improvements we have seen in people are actually losing information. Let's see. Snake was right, claims the process of evolutionism is not random. If it's not random, he just admitted it's religious, because that means he believes there is a power or intelligence. He might not want to call it God, but that's God he's describing. That's the way some people look at God. But there's something he's believing that's guiding it. And so he's just admitted that he has a religious belief that he's clinging to. And so if it's a religious belief, because there's something guiding it, then it does not belong in a science classroom. The grand finale of their debate was an excellent setup for debate number 3. I don't know if it's going to happen. I hope it happens. I predict, since Kent Hovind won these first 2 debates, hands down, it was not even close, he'll win the next debate too. But there are idiots out there who are flat earthers. They claim the earth is flat, not a round ball. And so the end of this debate that I'm giving you a review of, Snake was right, claimed that creationists are just like flat earthers. He said he watched a video Kent Hovind made refuting flat earthers. Kent Hovind said no. Flat earthers and creationists like him are very different, not following the same logic and things like that. But that flat earthers are science deniers like evolutionists. Evolutionists have more in common with flat earthers than creationists. Of course evolutionists who deny science and want their religion put into public school textbooks are more like flat earthers than creationists. But maybe there will be a debate, so I'll have more to say on that subject. Thank you for watching my summary of 2 debates between Kent Hovind and Snake Was Right. You have a good day.